Hello, everyone. You're watching SK Live. I'm Indraneel Basu. With me today, we have a very special guest, very renowned journalist, TV journalist, Mr. Rajdeep Sardesai, and of course, son of a great cricketer, Mr. Dilip Sardesai. He's no more with us, but we all live in our memories, isn't it, sir? It's the memories which last forever.
Indranil, first of all, thank you very much for having me here on this show. Yeah, the memories do last. I must confess, I never really saw my father play in a test match, so that's a sort of regret. And there's only a little bit of footage available. I know of the Oval Test of 1971, but very little else. So I sort of lived through the memories of what his contemporaries tell me or what he told me. So that's a regret, but I guess that's something you've got to live with.
But you must have been helped by him in the nets when you were playing. You are a university blue, so you must
Yeah,
have given
sure.
him.
No. He gave me the odd tip. He wasn't my coach, but yes, he was there when I was sort of in the game. I was captaining Bombay schools, playing for West Zone schools, playing inter-university cricket. He was very much there around. I still remember actually 1979, 79, I think, as a 14-year-old, I played the Kangali, the club tournament of Mumbai for
Yes,
the first
yes,
time.
in Mumbai.
And
Yeah.
he and I played for the same club in the G division called Friends. And in the first match, he and I had a century partnership. I was 14, and he was what? I guess almost 40, he was almost 45 or whatever. So he was much older, and we almost had a we had a century partnership in the very first game that we played together. So that's one memory I always have. I even know the ground on which we had that century partnership. It was the Grand Medical Ground around Marine Drive, and he outscored me. That's all I
Wow.
remember. So in the century partnership, I think I must have scored about 30, 35 runs. He scored about 60, 65 runs.
Why wasn't he your coach? I mean,
Uh, I think it was, well, in Mumbai, traditionally, I don't think somehow, I don't think the culture was to make your father a coach. I don't know why. But my dad coached the under 19 and under 22 teams for one summer coaching camp. And it was a terrific 1 month where he really gave us a lot of tips on batting. You can ask the cricketers of the time, Sanjay Manjrekar, Chandu Pandit. They benefited hugely from that experience. But my own coach, I had someone called Vasant Amladi, who was an old Mumbai coach, very technically sound. And, so I just went to him because his coaching nets were close to where I lived. And that was that. I don't think I ever saw my father as my coach. I always saw him as my father, so.
okay.
And he was a very short tempered person. So I think beyond a point, I don't think he would have made a good coach for me.
Yeah, I can exactly relate to what you're saying. But wasn't he upset with you when you left with the game and you said, okay, I'll put my mind on academics and do something else in life?
Indrani, that's a good question. I No, really, actually, what I'm grateful to my father for was that he gave me the wings to fly. I think he realized by the time I was 18, 19, or maybe 20, that look, I just don't have it. My son just doesn't have it in him to make that next leap. He kept saying this to me, you don't have the fire in the belly. You've got the best coaching, you've got the best equipment, none of which I had. I had the fire in the belly. And I think that was the difference between my father and me. He had the fire in the belly, which I didn't for the game. I just wasn't. I was, obsessed with cricket, but I realized somewhere you need a talent, and you need the talent married to a certain temperament to be able to play big cricket. And I don't think I had the talent or the temperament at the end of the day. And once he realized that, I think he was, he sort of, I think, guided me almost to tell me, look, cricket's not for you. Uh, and I look, my father came. One of the amazing things in the read, he came from a small town like Madgaon, and we're talking of Madgaon in the 1940s and 50s. It
Yeah.
was really back of beyond, and he never played on a turf wicket, on a proper turf wicket till he was 17 and came to Mumbai. He came to Mumbai at 17, was playing for India at 21. I mean, obviously he was touched by talent and had something in him. So I've always believed that, there is no one formula to become a Test cricketer. I mean, who is to say that you could be, as with a Dhoni in Ranchi or my father in Madgaon, you come from
Yeah.
a small town, you don't have the facilities of the big city kids, but you have a certain fire in the belly, and I think that separates them from metro kids like me.
Absolutely, and it's the abundance of talent and temperament, as you said, and coming from a place where there was no turf wicket, and yet it's very easy to play against medium paces, but the way Dilip sir played against spinners, you need a lot of skill set, and he was one of the best batsmen against spinners, and to be able
Yeah,
to play,
yeah, I think that was, that's one thing. As I said, I've tried to sort of find out more about him through his contemporaries. I remember speaking to Prasanna once, and he said, when I bowled to your father and a Vijay Manjrekar, it was very difficult to even think of getting them out. They were just
yeah,
so quick on their feet. You see, I
yeah,
think that the thing was, if it's flighted, we'll step out slightly short back foot, very quick. Both my father and Vijay Manjrekar, because my father copied a lot of Manjrekar in his batting, particularly to spin, were slightly stout, but were very quick on their feet. And even in that innings, as I said, the century partnership I had with my father, I remember him stepping out and lifting the spin a couple of times for six, and doing it effortlessly.
yeah,
Their idea was not to let the ball, even the idea was to take the ball on the full or the half volley. Don't let the spinner settle. In
yeah.
fact, he tells me a famous story, Mysore versus Mumbai 66-67, I think, Ranji Trophy semi final. Mysore made 320 or 325, and they thought that they were going to win the match because it was a turning wicket. You had Chandrasekhar and Prasanna, their form. And at the end of the next day, Mumbai was 350 for one. My father made 170, and I think Ajit Wadekar went and made 320. They just destroyed Prasanna and Chandrasekhar. And the
Yes.
only way, I think, and they had a certain, I think it was almost arrogance when they played spin. In fact, interestingly, my father got out a lot of time in Test cricket to spinners, because I think he just didn't rate them. So he just was more willing to take chances against spin than he would against pace. And look, I think I think the entire generation, Hanuman Singh, Ramesh Saxena also didn't play much for India, but was known to be a terrific player of spin. I think that generation of cricketers, Polly Umbriger, all of them were destroyers of spin, because there was so much spin around. So they were used to playing it right from a young age. In fact, my father, I think, made his mark in a match 59, 58, 59, 18-year-old, had just come to Bombay. Wilson College, the college he had joined, played a match against Hindu Gymkhana, or either Wilson or Siddharth, wherever he had joined by then, because he then went to Siddharth, 58, 59, and played against a match against Vinu Mankad and Subhash Gupte, and scored 90 out of a total of 130. And that evening, Vinu Mankad came to my dad and said, I'm making you a member today of the Hindu Gymkhana, and I am paying your fees. And that was his big breakthrough. So, if you could score 90 out of 130 against Mankad and Gupte as a
Yeah.
19-year-old, you obviously had something in you. So I think when and my father always said that Mankad and Gupte were a touch above even the spinners of the later generation. So I think playing spin bowling was something that came naturally to them. I remember he also spoke of an innings he played in the Irani Trophy towards the end of his career, 79, 80 years old. Chandra and Venkat, I think. Irani Trophy. Bombay was. He scored 120 in a session and hit six or seven sixes. So they were, and,
Wow.
and remember, much lighter bats, right? So they couldn't, today's cricketers have much heavier bats, so they can even mistime shots go for six. But,
Absolutely.
I think they just enjoyed playing spin bowling.
And more than playing spin bowling, what was Dilip Sir's special was his balanced stance, which is very important. That your head in position, those things he carried very very convincingly. He was he used to start very like all Mumbai cricketers. They get a nervous. They are nervous starters, and once
Yeah.
they set in, you can't remove them. I mean,
The,
that's
the,
the hallmark of Mumbai batsmen.
No, absolutely. Indranil, I think the theory was, and my father would say it, and you'll hear it from the Mumbai cricketers, particularly of the 60s, 70s generation. The first hour belongs to the bowler. The next
Yeah.
5 hours belongs to us.
Yes.
That was the theory by which they played. And you know, and there was a premium on technical perfection. I guess in a way, at times maybe they were too wedded to their technique, but that's the way they were. You know, as I said, my father grew up watching the likes of Manjrekar and Hazare, you know, the greats of the 50s. And
Yeah.
I think what he told me is, you know, he said he saw Hazare, I think, play when he was 46 or 47, 44, 45, some benefit match. He said, you should have seen his bat. You know, it was so straight. So I think, you know, that generation was built on built its sort of cricket, modeled its cricket on the notion that the bat always has to be straight, elbow,
Yes.
a high elbow. Your bat has to be cocked at the right moment, head and eye, you know, right over the ball. That's how they played that game. You know, it was a very, it was, it, they were technically obsessed, yes.
And there was nothing called uppish drive in that
No,
generation.
no, no, no question about it. In fact, you know, even these sixes and all, I think were much later in his career. I think the early part of the career, the idea was if you lofted the ball, you were giving the bowler a chance. So, you know, why do you need to loft the ball when you can hit a four? So I think it was, and you know, interestingly, and this is less known, he actually had the record for a while for the fastest Indian 100 in terms of minutes. It may still be there. I think he scored it in 126 minutes against New Zealand here at Firozshah Kotla in Delhi, 65 in 126 minutes, which for a long time was the fastest 100 for India in terms of minutes. I still don't know who's broken it in terms of minutes. I know that Azhar and Sehwag have scored hundreds in terms of balls,
Yeah.
but so you know, the idea was that you could hit the ball along the ground and still score quickly. I think what happened to him, like to many other batsmen, he didn't really want to be an opener. You know, he was a middle order batsman, pushed into opening, and once you had to open, then you know you built your game around a defensive technique. While if he had remained a middle order batsman, maybe he would have been allowed to unveil the strokes that he really wanted to play. So I think he was in a way sort of imprisoned almost by the fact that he was forced to open through the 1960s.
But he did so well, and that's why they call him man responsible for renaissance of Indian cricket. Before Sunny Gavaskar walked in, it was laid by Dilip sir. You know, he created that history, that historic tour of 70-71 in the West Indies. What a moment! What are those moments?
You know, it's actually going to be 50 years, Indonesian, to that.
Yes,
I think in a couple of months. I think
yes,
they went to West Indies 70 December, and the tour went on till April. I think they won the test sometime in February of 71, and then went to England, of course, between August and September. It was the year that changed Indian cricket. You know, people look at, when you look back, I think 2 years are decisive: 71 and 83. 83
yeah,
for what it did to the one day game, and 71 for what it did to test cricket. I'll tell you a story. I was uh, I was at Bhubaneswar airport a couple of years ago, and the CISF guy comes to me. I'm standing in a long queue. He said, "Sir, आप line में क्यों बैठे हैं? आप चलिए ना ये VIP lounge में." So I said, "Well, look, great. Why not?" So I asked him, "Do you watch TV?" So he said, "No, I don't, sir. मैं टीवी बीवी तो नहीं देखता हूँ, लेकिन आप वो राजदीप सरदेसाई, दिलीप सरदेसाई के बेटे हैं ना?" तो मैंने कहा, हाँ हाँ, दिलीप सरदेसाई, किंगस्टन 212. So he remembered in 2018 about 212 scored in 1971. He was about a 50, 55-year old. So he must have been, you know, he would have been about 12, 14 at the time, or 10, 12 at the time. But he was clearly, you know, I think 71 for the generation before me, those who were in their teens in 1971, deeply influenced by that year. You ask anyone who's a cricket fan anywhere in the country who was, say, 13, 14, 15, 16 in that period, they remember 1971. You know,
absolutely.
it's a bit like I remember 83, or
Yeah,
someone else in the next generation will remember Tendulkar, or today's generation will remember Kohli, in terms of maybe a magical year or a moment, or 2011 for the Dhoni generation. You know, there's a year, a moment. So I think 71 for a particular generation that was growing up at the time was a seminal year. I don't think he saw himself as a Renaissance man. He was happy in his Kolhapuri chappal. So I don't think he saw himself as a Renaissance. I don't think he knew what it meant. If you had told him a Renaissance man, I don't think he would have been able to pronounce it also. But he was just happy. Yeah, I think, and I saw it the other day. I went and met Salim Durrani, and he was a great friend of my father, and perhaps the last
Yes,
sort of connect, one of the last few connects with his generation. And talking to him, I realized that for them, playing for India was just they just felt so privileged to be able to
yes,
play this game and travel
yes.
the world, see places that they had never seen. That was good enough. Everything else in life was a bonus.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you look at Dilip sir's record, someone who's given so much to Indian cricket, only played 30 Test matches, and this is something really disappointing. I am really shocked to see that number.
You see, I think what happened is between 67 and 70, when India played about 15, 20 test matches, that's when a combination of injuries, lack of form, he was in the middle of a series in England. John Snow broke his hand, so he had to come back. It took him time to recover. He had a bad tour of Australia, 67, 68. And then Vijay Merchant suddenly decided, I want to try younger people in 69, 70, when actually he was at his peak. In fact, I think that was his one regret. 68 to 70, Australia and New Zealand came to India. He believed he was playing his best cricket, but Vijay Merchant wanted a younger India, which is why, then 70, 71, he was a last minute inclusion, and the rest is history. So he missed out between 67 and 70 and about 15 to 20 test matches, which would have given him about 50 tests, which I think would have been more appropriate given what
Yeah,
he thought he deserved. But
no,
he had no regrets. He perhaps occasionally after a couple of drinks would tell you about Vijay Merchant, who he admired hugely as a batsman, but felt that he was just a terrible selector.
between 67 and 73, 10 times Bombay played the Ranji final, and all the 10 times Dilip sir was there, and they were the champions.
No, no,
Phenomenal.
more than that. Actually, he played first for Bombay in 1960-61, the
Yeah,
same year that he was picked for India as a 12th man against Pakistan. He's picked as a 12th man against Pakistan and plays for Mumbai the same time because he scored runs against Pakistan, the last Pakistan team to come to India in the 1960s. For combined universities, got a century, gets picked for as a 12th man because Lala Amarnath was very impressed with his batting. He also plays for Bombay the first time that year from 60-61 till 72-73 or till 73-74. I think plays 13 years for Mumbai and
yeah.
they never lost the Ranji. So 13 years, including
10
10
finals.
finals.
That's what I'm saying.
That's right, 10 finals. I think only Wadekar may have played one more, 11. But Wadekar played in a losing final as well, which was, I think, 70, the 74 semi final when we lost to Karnataka. But my dad, I think, was never on a losing Ranji Trophy team, never. Which I think which I think must be a world record. You can go across the world. Anyone who would have played 10 years or more of first class cricket would surely have been on a losing side at least once. I think that was a record that he really treasures. Never being on a losing side in a Ranji game.
And the fact that that was the tradition. They said that laid that foundation. So if you're a good player, you're guaranteed to play for India, but you're not guaranteed to play for Mumbai. The competition was so intense. So can you hear me?
Any,
I think
uh,
there's some
sorry.
internet connection problem.
Okay.
Your visual is not there.
Let me just check that. Something went wrong suddenly. Uh, why is it not coming? It says everyone can see and hear you.
I can see your photograph of yours. Your voice is
Oh, so
audible.
you're not being able to see the this thing.
I think the camera is switched off or something.
No, it's on. No, what's gone wrong? 1 minute. Uh,
This is a little adjustment. I'm sorry, viewers. Little technical
no,
problem which
not
is.
at all. Not at all. Why did it suddenly go off? I don't know. Let me try and see what I need to do.
You can relog.
Okay.
You can relog again.
Should I should I relog?
Yeah, it's better if you can do it like that. Yes.
So what do I do? I go back into the entire system as you had said.
Yes,
Your
you if you can
browser has
relog, you
lost
can log and
connection.
come back.
Then make sure no
Yes.
are using your camera mic. Then refresh the page.
Yeah, if you can do that. Yeah, yeah, you are back for us.
Yeah.
Yes, you're back.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
We have to live with this, and
Yeah.
the way
Sure.
it's
Sure.
going,
Go ahead.
the pandemic, it's better to stay safe, stay in your homes, talk to your favorite
Sure.
stars. That
Now
this is the
tell me, you
best we
were
can do.
look. You're right in a way that playing for Mumbai in that period was more difficult at times than playing for India, particularly
Yes.
as a batsman.
Yeah.
In fact, when my father first played for Mumbai, he batted at number 8 because you had Polly Umbrigar, Bapu Nadkarni, Ramchand.
That's what.
It was a formidable batting side at the time. But I think it also reflects the shift in the geographical shift in Indian cricket because now cricket has spread well beyond the metros. Let's just
Yes.
think about it. If my father was playing cricket today, he may never have had to move from Goa to Mumbai. He could have played Ranji Trophy for Goa. In those days, Goa had no Ranji team. And he
Yes.
remains still today the only Goa born cricketer to play for India. So, you know, in those days, you had to move out of the small town to play in the big city. Today, that's not the case.
And so things have moved on. In fact, in early 90s also, as junior cricketers, we were told that how tough Mumbai is to play cricket from there. But Dilip sir wasn't a great fielder, but he had catches, dismissing Gary Sobers in forward short leg and all that. I hear stories like that. Do you
Yeah,
remember? But
the fact is very interesting again that when he was first picked for India in that 60-61 series, he was picked as a 12th man, and his fielding was seen as an asset in 60-61. What happened over the years? Put on weight, loved his fish curry rice, loved his glass of beer later in life, and I think slowed down. And there's a great story that Bishan Bedi says, and only Bedi can say these stories with great aplomb is he was playing, I think, in Australia at Adelaide, which has very long straight boundaries.
yes,
Uh, and I think Walters or someone hit the ball, and they were going to run a fifth run because the boundary was very far. So what did my father do? He kicked the ball over the boundary, so it would be a four. They were street smart cricketers. So they realized that if he stopped the ball and threw it back, they'd run five. So you might as well kick the ball over the boundary, so it's only four. So as Walters was running for a fifth, the umpire had to signal a four. Uh, that generation, whatever else, they may not have been very highly coached, but they were very street smart cricketers. That I think set them apart from today's cricketers.
and fitness was their own business, and no one messes with my
Yeah, I
fitness.
mean, look, I keep hearing stories of them, on rest days going to Delhi Darbar and having he and Hanuman Singh in 65 or 66 had a bet who will have more tandoori chickens. And can you imagine that being done today? That and those days cricket had a rest day. The 5-day test had a rest
Yeah,
day. So on
yeah,
the rest day, they would go to Moti Mahal. I think not Delhi, there are Moti Mahal in Delhi in Daryaganj, and they went
yes,
for they had a competition as to who will have more tandoori chickens. Can you imagine that happening today? So it was another India, another sort of world almost, where sort of fitness was secondary. Again, it was, I think, came because they were all amateurs. There was no professionalism in that sense. uh, they worked in the office in the purchase department at ACC from 9 to 4, then were
yes,
allowed 1 hour. They were allowed to leave 1 hour earlier at 3 so that they could go to practice, but they had to register, clock into office every day. So that
absolutely.
was the difference. So today you don't, at 18 you don't even have to go to university. You can just be an IPL star and then
And
graduate into the Indian team.
absolutely. And what was really special was the way they gelled together as teammates. On the field, very fierce competitors, off the field, great friends.
Absolutely. My father's favorite memories are, all the time he had with the West Indian cricketers. Whether it's a Sobers before him, of Sir Frank Worrell, Wes Hall, who remained a great lifelong friend of my father. And when
Absolutely.
they met, they were, there would be lots of laughter, and you spent your evenings after the match together. Durrani was telling me the other day, very interesting story. He said, after the first test match in West Indies in 71, my father and he went to Ajit Wadekar saying we want to be roommates, because my father, I think, was rooming with Venkat Raghavan, and said Venkat Raghavan is too disciplined for me. Durrani and I need to be roommates. So he and Durrani became roommates. They were both, in the last stages of their career. They wanted to have a good time. And and Durrani said, my deal with your father was that in the morning I would make chai for him, and I told him, मैं तेरे लिए चाय बनाता हूँ, तू आज 100 करेगा. So my dad made 100, as it turned out, and after that Durrani said every day I had to make tea for your father. In the night we would have our glass of beer. So morning tea, night beer. So I said, how much beer? He said, that you must not ask. And so it was they were happy-go-lucky people who, as I said, saw it just as a privilege, a bonus, that they could play this game for India. Uh, they'd have great fun. I think they had much more fun than today's cricketers, in the sense of having a life outside the game.
Absolutely. And that's how, after he retired, his basic adda place was CCI, which is Raj Singh Dungapur. And
Absolutely,
he
they were
discussed cricket so passionately.
every morning. In fact, one of the last remaining members of their tea gang passed away earlier this year, and I think my father would have really, I mean, they must be all sitting upstairs now having their batata vadas early morning, scrambled eggs and toast, and talking cricket, talking about life, talking about different things, whatever is the news. They would read the morning papers, come there, they would walk around Marine Drive, come to the club, then sit and have their scrambled eggs, mint toast, and mint tea and toast, and then go home about 10, 10:30. Everyone going to their places again, back next day, every day, Monday to Saturday, rains, sun or shine, they would be there. As I said, it was I you know they were all cricket romantics. They were all in love with the game. They love,
Yes.
the passion, I'm sure, is still there in today's cricketers. I have no doubt that today's cricketers are even perhaps more passionate about the game than my father's generation. But do they? I don't think they miss the game as much as my father and my generation did.
So can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I
So
can.
I think they're more passionate. You were talking about the passion about the game.
Yeah, I think today's cricketers are extremely passionate about their game, work very hard, remarkable professionals, very fit. But I don't know whether they are romantics. Whether they, वो प्यार होता है ना, पहला पहला प्यार, पहला नशा. These, these were all, वो, अपने धुन में चल रहे थे. It was the generation of, it's like the film stars of that generation. You speak to a Devanand had his own style. I remember Devanand took me on the Lahore bus yatra when I had gone with Vajpayee's bus yatra. Devanand took
2000.
me to the law college there, because he was part of the bus yatra, and he points out to a tree, and he says, under this tree I kissed my first girlfriend. Now, oh, Devanand, he was there in Lahore bus yatra. He was remembering about his first girlfriend. These cricketers also will, were, you see, who they gave the first autograph to. Oh, that was the autograph generation, not the selfie generation. And
Absolutely.
they were superstars in their own way. Huge fan adulation in those times as well. But I think they were still, their feet were always on the ground. I
Absolutely.
believe that generation, always were very, very grounded in the way they played the sport.
And he was a fierce debater as far as the game is concerned. And that's how a little bit of DNA has been passed on to you also. You become a journalist.
No, I look, I fierce debater in the sense that he had very strong opinions about the sport, and he was a very good talent scout. I remember when I think in 2006 or something, he rang me up once saying, I have seen a superb stroke player. So I said, what happened? He said, nay, nay, I was at the Maidan, and this boy was just hitting the ball beautifully. And naturally, I said, then I found out he was talking about Rohit Sharma. And he had seen
Wow.
Rohit Sharma as a 13-year-old or something. Immediately rang up the head of the junior selector saying, I want this boy picked in the junior team. And I have a lovely photograph somewhere of my father showing Rohit Sharma how to keep the elbow up and make sure that you're how to leave the ball outside the off stump. I don't know how much Rohit has learned from that because he likes to play outside the off stump. But I could see that my father was excited that here was a young talent that needed to be nurtured. And
Absolutely.
so he was a very good spotter. He would go every Sunday to the Maidan looking for these young talents. And that, I think, legacy of Mumbai has gone missing. Few people like Vengsarkar and others still do it, but not enough. That legacy of going to the Maidan and looking for the, for that talent on the Maidans.
That's really. I mean, and you talk about the legacy, and we generation, hopefully, current generation, hopefully, could carry that sort of legacy, that passion, that romanticism which you talked about. So it was pleasure having you. I wish I could talk more, but you're also hard pressed for time, and we will chat in the next session we have. It was really, and when we complete 50 years of 70-71 tour of West Indies next year, we'll definitely catch up.
Yeah,
We will.
I think I to me that's a milestone. I really hope that you all are able to reflect this milestone through the year because I think there are lots of memories. Very some of the cricketers are still around of 70-71. Many of them. The great spinners are still with us. Gavaskar, of course, and Vishwanath. These are all romantic names. I all of them. I used to collect these quality caps, quality ice cream caps with all the photographs of these cricketers of the
Yeah.
71 tour. And if you collected all the caps, I think you got some prize. I don't know what the prize was, but I was obsessed for a year collecting quality caps with all the cricketers' photographs. So it's nice talking to you, Indranil, and it's lovely being nostalgic about the past. So thank you very
Absolutely.
much for having me.
Thank you, sir, for coming on SK Live. Good day.
My
Stay safe, stay happy, sir.
Stay safe, stay happy to you and all your viewers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.